Other people's opinions about you are none of your business. Because you may have heard this expression before. Opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one and they all stink. So let people's opinions sit where they are. And you can hear them. You can even acknowledge them. But when you let other people's opinions put fences around you and define who you are and what you can do, you condemn yourself to a life of smallness. Hello and good morning, Gen X fam, and all those who want to learn from our wisdom. Welcome back. You know, I was giving some thought over the weekend to the experiences that we have over the course of our life and how those experiences play into the fears that we may have around money. And those fears actually come from wounds, literal wounds that are created when we experience things related to money. I'll give you an example. You may not even be aware of it, but someone who's in a car and either gets T-boned or rear-ended by someone, they might experience that sudden jolt, and then they get out of the car, they walk around, they think that everything's fine. And so, they just go on about their day, unaware that something is going on inside. And then maybe a day later, a few days later, they start to feel that pain in the neck or that pain in the back. And that's because something unseen to them under the skin has damaged them, has wounded them, and it could lead to lifelong problems, which is where you get injury lawyers from. They thrive on that sort of thing. Some of them are bottom feeders, but some of them protect us actually from the damaging long-term effects of just an event that happened one time. And money wounds come from events like that. So today what I want to talk about is a few of those money wounds that can actually just live inside you and cause you to have a toxic relationship with money. So I'm going to cover a few of them. I'm going to cover 5, in fact. And the first one I want to start with is being taught that money is hard. And we all love our parents. They did the best they could with us. But unbeknownst to them at the time, because of their proficiency and their experience with money, they may have taught us that money is actually hard. Now, what do I mean by that? Money, when you talk about it, there's a language that you use around it. You may have heard your parents say, "Oh, I work so hard and I hardly can get ahead." You sitting on the floor, you playing with your toys, and you're not really thinking too much about what they said. But if you hear that over and over and over again, you realize that money is hard. I remember growing up, this one particular instance where we went grocery shopping, and my father, of course, he paid cash like everybody did back then. And it came time, the cashier had rung up everything at the register, came time to pay. I saw my father open up his wallet, and the amount that she said, it was somewhere around, you know what, I don't know, let me not say. But whatever the amount was, it was everything that my father had in his wallet. And I saw the pain on his face as he pulled the money out and handed it over. And it's funny that I didn't think too much of it at the time, but it stuck with me because I can remember it and recite it to this day. clearly it had an impact on me. And it showed me that money can be hard. There's pain associated with it. And that's what I took away with that. Just not from that one instance, but from other instances also. So how do we turn that around? Well, the thing that we can do is understand that no matter where we came from, we have the ability to rewrite our story. And we have the ability to create the experience that we desire. We also have the ability to learn because we're intelligent people. So what do? We teach ourselves. We read books. We go do research online. We attend workshops. We get a money mentor. We hire a money coach. We take personal responsibility for our education around money so that we eventually teach ourselves that money's not hard. If you've ever learned a new skill and you thought that it was hard before you learned it, but then afterwards you realized it was not that hard. I remember in high school music class, I dreaded it because I remember in junior high, I played drums. I was good at that. Understood it, picked it up, could read the notes and all of this stuff. I can read beats in music. But when it comes to guitar, you gotta now read notes. Not only that, you have to know how to position your fingers and your hands on the fret. You gotta know which strings to hit. Don't even ask me about chords and notes. I forgot all of that stuff when I got out of it. But strangely enough, after a few weeks in that class, I could actually play notes. Seeing them on the paper, knowing A's, C's, D's, whatever the notes are, and then knowing automatically how to position my hand. It seemed hard at first, but over time, it got easy simply because I devoted the time to learn it. So if you think that money is hard because you've been taught by your previous experiences in life that money's hard, you can relearn and master money the same way I learned how to play the guitar from nothing. It's just a matter of you taking the time and devoting the time to doing it because you care enough about it to master your money future. All right, now what's the next wound that we may experience? Well, if you grew up like me in the 70s and the 80s, you understood what lack was if your family just didn't have what everybody else has had. So that was a time of designer labels. I remember Lee jeans were big in the beginning. Like if you went to school and you wanted to be up on the fashion, you had your Lee bell-bottom jeans. Who remembers those? I remember them clearly. And I remember my parents couldn't get them for me right away. So it took some time. But then when I finally got my mother to take me down to Jamaica Avenue to VIM, y'all remember that, right? If you grew up in Queens, you know Jamaica Avenue, you know VIM. I got my one pair of Lee bell-bottom jeans. One pair. And I loved those jeans, man. I wore them at least twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. And I remember one day I was in school and I had these jeans on and I had worn them the day before too. So I put them on again, went to school. And somebody said, "Didn't you wear those jeans yesterday?" And I immediately lied. I said, "No, this is a different pair." And they said, "That looks like the same pair you had on yesterday." And I said, "Well, they all look the same. It's the same pair." But I knew inside that I was lying. He knew that inside I was lying. And everybody else around that conversation was like, yeah, that's probably the same pair of jeans he had on. He only got one pair. I remember going home so ashamed. That wasn't the only experience. Like, there were other things that I went through. My family never had to go on public assistance, but we never had a lot. I didn't realize what position I was in until I got older. I used to think, well, we were middle class. No, my family really wasn't middle class. It was lower middle class. We weren't poor, but we were lower middle class. And a lot of my friends and us, we grew up in that same situation. So what that did for me is it made me ashamed of having that lack. Like, we never had the new cars, never had the latest fashions, didn't take the big vacations. Like, friends would go away for the summer to Disney World or things like that. That wasn't in my family's experience. It was just, we would drive down south to stay in the family trailer on the family land and spend that time and then drive back to New York. That was our vacations. So I grew up feeling like I needed to make up for lost time. So what did I do? As soon as I got out and started working on my own, I started accruing debt. And I accrued that debt because I wanted to wear the latest fashions. I wanted to have nice things. I wanted to drive a new car. And so I went into a dealership when I got my first real job, and I let them bury me in $10,000 worth of new car debt for a car that I hated and was a showroom model with no bells and whistles in it, and the guy sold it to me at sticker price. Lesson learned. And I continued that behavior until it culminated in me losing my job, my son being born, breaking down in tears, realizing I had nothing, and just surrendering to bankruptcy. And that left a mark. So here's what you can do to deal with that unrealistic shame that comes from not having what everybody else has. Here's the reality. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck in this country. So don't be fooled by the outward view that they're putting out. Recognize that your everyday millionaire is the guy on your block who's driving the used car, who's not looking fancy, who lives in an average home, and isn't looking to upgrade his lifestyle every time he gets paid. So understand that living a normal life financially actually can lead to an extraordinary life later on, because you're living below your means. Meanwhile, your neighbor is living at their means or above, and they're accruing debt, headed on that fast track to bankruptcy just like I was. So please recognize that keeping up with the Joneses is fake. And you will gain more shame trying to keep up with them and live a fake life than by living an authentic life below your means, knowing that you're comfortable, you're secure, and you can't be shaken from where you are because you've got your life financially under control. All right, number 3. Here's another one I experienced. Being hurt by failure. Everybody experiences failure. But the thing about failure is it's a natural part of our growth. Think about it. When you were a baby, did you just decide one day, or did your parents just decide one day, you're going to walk? And so they stood you up, or you stood yourself up and you said, I got this. And you just walked and you didn't fall down. Absolutely not. You fell down. I remember when my son Michael was just learning how to walk. Saw him, he would, we had the little, the training thing. I forget what you call it now. A walker. It was a walker. So, it's got the wheels on it. They sit in the little basket, and it has a tray around it, and they just scoot around on this thing. And one day I'm looking at him and I'm saying to myself, this kid, he's really mostly standing up. He's not even leaning or supporting himself on this thing. So I said, all right, time for you to learn how to walk. took the walker away, never to be seen again. And we were like, okay, you're going to walk. So we stood him up. His mother was holding him. And I said, come on, Michael, come on. You can do it. You can do it. Come on. And he just took one step, took another one, da 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 da, and then he fell forward into my arms. And we just congratulated him. I kissed him. I was like, good boy, good boy. And from then on, it was his job to learn how to walk. I can't tell you how many times he fell down and you heard the pamper go squish, squish, squish when he was learning how to walk. But every time he fell, it was a failure. But it was a learning experience, because even when he fell and he looked at us, I didn't look back at him and say, oh, because kids feed off of that. And so he learned that there was no shame in falling down. He got up and he eventually learned how to walk on his own. We went through the same experience ourselves. A lot of times we go through those experiences with money. We get ourselves into debt. Bankruptcy was my first failure, my first major failure. Then I remember when at one point I got laid off from a job and I decided, well, I'm just going to work for myself. Failed at that. Didn't make enough money. Had to go back into the workforce. These are failures. But I learned to learn lessons from those failures, and you can do the same thing. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you. So many people, you see their stories all the time. They lose limbs. They're born with massive defects where they don't even have limbs to walk. They may not have arms, but they're playing piano with their feet. They're cooking with their feet. They're adjusting. They're learning to adapt. Every struggle, every situation you go through, there is a lesson to be learned in it. And I remember as I walked the entrepreneurial journey, there were lessons for me to learn. Those lessons came in the form of not moving too fast. They came in the form of not over leveraging myself. They came in the form of learning how to budget my money. They came in the form of learning how to understand that you have to have cash reserves, because every day is not going to be a great day when you work for yourself, or even when you're in sales. There's going to be up times, there's going to be bad times. And that's how I came up with my SMART system. Learning the hard way from those lessons and not being ashamed to pick myself up and try again. Because the winner is not measured by how many times they fall. In fact, I actually have that on my wall back here, if you've ever seen it. A champion is defined not by their wins, but how they can recover when they fall. And that's by Serena Williams. Right over my shoulder, I see that every day. So learn to learn from your failures, and you can turn your mess into the masterpiece that everybody else wishes they had. But you can't have that masterpiece until you learn from your messes. So ask yourself, when something goes sideways, okay, it went sideways, but what lesson did I learn from that? Okay, now how do I take that forward so that I don't repeat that again and do better the next time? All right. Fourth thing. This is painful, leaves a real wound, but it happens. Being insulted by loved ones. Yes, the people who you think are the ones who should have your back and support you through thick and thin will be the first ones to hurt you. They will ridicule you. They'll tell you, who do you think you are? You're not better than us or better than me. They'll tell you, I couldn't do this, so what makes you think you can? And then in the worst cases, I'm going to share this with you. And if little kids are around, you might want to make them leave the room, because I'm going to use some words here, but I want you to hear the weight of the words so you understand how words can hurt. This person, who I shall not name, who was supposed to be my rock, my stone, my ride or die, my everything. One day I remember we were in the house and this person said to me, "You're a fucking loser." That never left me. It was like being punched in the face. In fact, it would have been better if they had punched me in the face, because I could have healed from that. But those words will never leave me. Now, I've learned how to deal with them by going through therapy and learning and growing, but I will never forget those words. And I'll never forget how that made me feel. And when the people around you insult you and belittle you and demean you, that leaves a wound that is very slow to heal, if ever. So I'm not gonna, throw sunshine and rainbows and flowers into the air and talk about how you shouldn't just let this bother you and you should move on. It's a process, and everybody's process is different. But what I will say is this, which is the lesson that I had to learn the hard way. And that is, other people's opinions about you are none of your business. Because you may have heard this expression before. Opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one and they all stink. So let people's opinions sit where they are. And you can hear them. You can even acknowledge them. But when you let other people's opinions put fences around you and define who you are and what you can do, you condemn yourself to a life of smallness. Don't ever dim your light because someone else can't stand it. Don't ever shrink yourself because other people around you are too small. You have to learn to live in your fullness and accept the value that God Himself sees in you when He created you. He didn't create you to be a loser. He didn't create you to live small. He created you to have a full, enjoyable, and happy life. And when you embrace that, that's when you step into your true self. It took me a while to do that, but I've done it. I'm here. I still remember it, but it's more like a distant echo now. And maybe in time I'll completely forget. But let this be the lesson to you who would say those things. Shut up. Nobody needs your insults. Nobody needs your little small-minded opinion. And if you feel that you have to make yourself feel bigger by insulting others, you're the loser. And just remember that those who receive that, those are the losers, man. Because anybody who has to make themselves feel bigger by insulting others in that way, they're losers. Okay, so that brings us to our fifth money wound that is really self-inflicted. And that one is surrounding yourself in a culture of lack. What does that look like, and how does it wound us? Okay, so it's a well-known fact that if you look at your social circle, your income will be somewhere around the 3 to 5 closest people that you spend the most time with. So if you're not happy with where you are financially, then maybe it's time to ask yourself, am I mirroring the people who are closest to me? Now, that doesn't make them bad people. But if you want to get better, sometimes you got to crawl out of the bucket. And you have to leave certain people where they are. Now, that doesn't mean cutting them off, because different people serve different purposes in your life. Like, there's the Friday night hangout people. There's the, I got a problem. I need to just let you hear me out and give me some advice. There's your family. You can't disconnect yourself from them completely in most cases. Sometimes you have to. We all got our family issues, don't we? Then we have the people who are actually the upbeat, positive ones. They're striving. They seem to be doing well. And you're trying to figure out, why is it we seem to be around the same level, but they're doing so much better than me? These are all people that we can learn lessons from. Like, broke people, you can learn from them, because if you don't want to be broke, don't do what broke people do. Don't have broke people habits. But if you want to be wealthy, then practice wealthy people habits. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what do my friends, my associates, tell me about me? Maybe you need to start categorizing people, letting them play their position. But for the position of getting ahead, you need to get around people who are more aggressive, who are more skilled at what they do, who have shown mastery with their money, and are playing at a higher level than you. Because you can't get to where you want to be doing, saying, believing the same things that you currently do. You have to change in those things for a new set of actions, beliefs, and words. So you get those things by being around people who are doing the things that you want to do, the levels that you want to play at. So that might mean getting around a certain networking group, a certain mastermind, cultivating closer relationships with people in your life who are playing at higher levels. Now, I'm not saying go seek out people and be their friends just for what you can get from them. That's just so grimy and low. But you have people around you who you can learn from. Spend more time with them. And if you don't have people like that around you, then go spend time in networking groups. There's all kinds of social groups online you can get with. There's meetup groups that you can be around. Spend more time with those people. Make yourself better. Because if you are not getting better every day, the world is moving forward. Time is moving forward. Things get more expensive. The dollar buys less and less. So if you're not growing your skill set so that your dollars grow, your buying power grows, you're actually falling behind. If you're not growing, you're dying. So keep that in mind. Choose your associates wisely, because show me your friends and I'll show you you. All right, guys, that's it for this episode this week. Please take to heart what I said. If you are suffering from any of those money wounds, acknowledge them, address them, and take the actions that I gave you as a start. They are not a cure-all. They're a start. And if you need coaching, get with somebody who can help you in that area. All right, guys, you have a great day, a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you again soon.